My name is Sheila Bennett, 30 years old, and for 3 years I've been quietly paying off my family's debts every cent every month without a single thank you. Last Sunday we sat around the dinner table, the smell of roasted chicken filling the air, and I thought, maybe they'd see me for once. Instead, my parents leaned toward my sister, their eyes glowing with pride, and then turned to me. "You're not half the woman your sister is," they said, their voices sharp, cutting through the clink of glasses. The room froze. My sister smirked, oblivious to the weight of those words. I clenched my fork, my heart pounding, but I didn't say a word. I just stood, pushed my chair back and walked out. They thought they could crush me, but they had no idea what I was about to do, something that would leave them all stunned, scrambling to pick up the pieces. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was done hiding. If you've ever felt overlooked by your own family, drop a comment below and share your story. Hit that subscribe button to see how this unfolds. Growing up in Fresno, California, my sister and I were inseparable, like two peas in a pod, until high school changed everything. Back when we were kids, we'd spend summer afternoons racing bikes down the street, laughing until our sides hurt. She'd braid my hair, and I'd sneak her extra cookies from the jar. We were a team, sharing secrets under the glow of a flashlight in our shared bedroom. My parents watched us with equal pride, their smiles warm, their voices encouraging. But that was before my sister picked up the violin at 12, and everything shifted. By high school, her talent became the center of our family. She'd practice for hours, the notes floating through the house, and my parents would sit mesmerized as if she were the only one in the room. "Your sister's going places?" Mom would say, her eyes fixed on the music stand. Dad would nod, adding, "She's got something special." I'd sit at the kitchen table, my math homework spread out, hoping for a glance, a word of praise. But their focus stayed on her. Their voices softer when they spoke to me, as if my presence was an afterthought. I wasn't jealous, at least not at first. I loved hearing her play, loved how her fingers danced on the strings. But the comparison started creeping in. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Mom asked one day, her tone sharp when I got a B on a science test. Dad chimed in. "She doesn't waste her potential." I was 15, and those words stung like a slap. I tried to carve my own path. I joined the computer club, diving into coding and data analysis, things that made my brain hum with excitement. By senior year, I'd won a regional tech competition, my first real taste of success. I rushed home, clutching my certificate, thinking maybe this time they'd see me. But when I showed it to Mom, she glanced at it, then said, "That's nice, Sheila, but your sister's auditioning for a conservatory next week." Dad barely looked up from his newspaper, muttering, "Good job, kid." My chest tightened, but I swallowed the hurt, tucking the certificate into a drawer. It wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. As the years went by, the gap widened. My sister chased her music dreams, performing at local venues, her name in small print on posters around town. My parents followed her every move, attending every recital, their faces glowing with pride. I went to college, studied data science, and landed a job at a tech firm in Fresno. By 25, I was earning a solid salary, building a career I loved. I'd call home hoping to share my wins, a promotion, a big project, but Mom would steer the conversation back to my sister. "She's playing at a festival this weekend," she'd say, or Dad would add, "She's really making a name for herself." My achievements felt like background noise, drowned out by the melody of her violin. I started to notice the pattern. Every family gathering, every phone call revolved around her. If I mentioned my work, Mom would smile thinly and say, "That's practical, Sheila, but your sister's passion is something else." Dad would agree, his voice firm. "She's got a gift." I'd nod, forcing a smile, but inside I was screaming. Why couldn't they see me? Why was my hard work, my stability, never enough? I wasn't trying to compete with her. I just wanted to be seen, to matter as much as she did. But every time I thought I'd earned their respect, they'd raise the bar, holding her up as the standard I could never meet. By the time I hit my late 20s, I'd learned to keep my victories quiet. I stopped expecting their praise, stopped hoping for their attention. But the hurt didn't fade. It grew like a knot in my chest, tightening with every comparison. I loved my sister, but I couldn't escape the shadow she cast, or the way my parents placed her on a pedestal while I stood below, invisible. That knot would unravel soon in a way I never expected. But back then, all I could do was keep going, hoping one day they'd see the daughter standing right in front of them. 3 years ago, Mom called me in the middle of the night, her voice shaking with panic because her flower shop had collapsed. I was 27, living in my own apartment, finally settled into my data analyst job. The phone buzzed on my nightstand, jarring me awake. "Sheila, we're in trouble." She whispered, her words clipped, desperate. She explained how her shop, her pride and joy for a decade, had been bleeding money. She'd taken out loans from a shady credit outfit, thinking she could turn things around. But the debts piled up, and now the bank was threatening to foreclose on our family's home. "If this gets out, it'll ruin us," she said, her voice breaking. I sat up in bed, my heart racing, trying to process it all. I asked why she didn't tell Dad or my sister, but she begged me to keep it secret, saying it would shame her in their eyes. Against my better judgment, I agreed to help. I started funneling money from my savings to cover the payments, $5,000 a month, sometimes more. It wasn't easy. I cut back on everything: dinners out, new clothes, even my weekend coffee runs. My bank account dwindled, but I told myself it was for family, for Mom's dream, for our home. Every month I'd wire the money and Mom would send a curt text. "Got it. Thanks." No questions about how I was managing, no gratitude beyond those 2 words. I thought maybe this would make her see me, make her realize I was holding things together. But nothing changed. Instead, Mom and Dad kept their focus on my sister. Her violin performances were all they talked about, even as I was draining my savings to keep us afloat. I'd visit home hoping for a moment of acknowledgement, but the conversation always swung back to her. "Your sister's got a big recital coming up," Mom would say, her eyes lighting up as she showed me a flyer with my sister's name in bold. Dad would nod, adding, "She's really shining, Sheila." I'd force a smile, my stomach twisting, and mention my latest project at work, a new data model that saved my company thousands. Mom would glance over, say, "That sounds nice," then turn back to her phone, scrolling through photos of my sister on stage. Dad didn't even look up, just mumbled, "Keep it up, kid." Their words felt like a door slamming in my face. I tried to talk to Mom about the shop once, thinking maybe we could sort out a plan to stabilize things. I sat her down at the kitchen table, spreadsheets ready, showing how we could cut costs. She barely listened. "Your sister's practicing for a regional competition," she said, cutting me off. "She needs our support." I stared at her, my carefully prepared numbers blurring on the page. Dad walked in, caught the tail end, and added, "Let's not distract her right now, Sheila. She's got enough on her plate." I swallowed hard, shoving the papers back into my bag. They didn't care that I was carrying their secret, their debt, their home on my shoulders. The months turned into years, and the payments kept coming out of my account. I'd lie awake at night calculating what was left, wondering how long I could keep this up. My sister's career was faltering, gigs were sporadic, and she leaned on Mom and Dad for extra cash. I knew some of my money was indirectly propping her up too, but they never told her. Instead, they'd praise her at every turn, as if she were the one holding the family together. "She's got such passion," Mom said one evening, her voice warm with pride. Dad agreed. "She's our star." I sat there silent, the weight of their secret pressing down on me. I wanted to scream, to tell them it was my money, my sacrifice, keeping us from losing everything. But I didn't. I just nodded, the hurt burrowing deeper. Looking back, I see how that time shaped me. I kept going, kept paying because I thought it was my duty. But every ignored effort, every brushed-off achievement added another crack to my heart. I wasn't just invisible, I was expendable. And yet, I couldn't stop, not yet. I told myself it was for the family, but deep down, I was still hoping they'd see me, that they'd finally understand what I was doing for them. That hope kept me tethered even as it tore me apart. Last Sunday's dinner was meant to celebrate my sister's big performance, but it became the breaking point. I arrived at our family's Fresno home, my stomach already knotted with the familiar dread of being overlooked. The table was set with Mom's best plates, and the air carried the warmth of her signature lasagna. I took my usual seat across from my sister, who was beaming as Mom handed her a glass of wine. "To your latest triumph," Mom said, raising her glass, her smile wide enough to light the room. Dad echoed, "You make us so proud." I forced a smile, hoping for a moment to share my own news, a promotion at work that I'd worked months to earn. But before I could speak, Mom turned to me, her eyes narrowing. "Sheila, you could learn from your sister's drive," she said, her voice sharp. "You're not half the woman she is." Dad nodded, adding, "She's got ambition, not just a desk job." The words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. My sister didn't flinch, just sipped her wine, a faint smirk curling her lips. I sat there, my fork frozen in my hand, the lasagna untouched. My heart pounded, but I didn't let a single word escape. I'd spent 3 years paying off Mom's debts, sacrificing my savings, my plans, my peace. And this was what they thought of me. I looked at Mom, her face glowing with pride for my sister, then at Dad, his eyes fixed on her too. I was invisible, my efforts erased by their obsession with her violin, her so-called brilliance. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, but I kept my face blank. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crack. I stood my chair, scraping the floor, and mumbled, "I need some air." Mom barely glanced up, waving a hand dismissively. "Don't make a scene, Sheila," she said. Dad didn't even look my way, just muttered, "Let her go." My sister raised an eyebrow as if my exit was some petty tantrum. I grabbed my purse and walked out, the front door clicking shut behind me. The cool night air hit my face, but it didn't calm the fire in my chest. I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel, replaying their words, their indifference. I'd carried their secret, kept their home safe, and they still saw me as less. That was the moment I knew I was done. Back in my apartment, I sat at my desk, the glow of my laptop the only light in the room. My fingers trembled as I opened my email and started typing. I addressed it to Mom, Dad, and my sister. No one was left out. I laid it all bare, how I'd paid off Mom's credit loans for 3 years, every dollar I'd sent, every sacrifice I'd made to protect her pride. I wrote about the nights I'd stayed up balancing my budget to keep their house from foreclosure while they praised my sister's every note. Then I typed the words I'd been holding back. "I'm done. No more payments. No more carrying this for you. You're on your own." I hit send, my heart racing, and shut the laptop. It was out there now, no taking it back. By morning, my phone was buzzing. Missed calls from Mom, texts from Dad, even a voicemail from my sister. Mom's messages were frantic. "Sheila, how could you do this to us?" Dad's were softer, almost pleading. "Let's talk, kid. This isn't you." My sister's voicemail was sharp, accusing me of betraying the family, of making her look bad. I stared at the screen, their words piling up, but I didn't respond. I'd spent years waiting for them to see me, to value what I'd done. They didn't get to rewrite the story now. I turned off my phone and leaned back, the silence louder than their messages. For the first time, I felt the weight of their expectations lift, replaced by a clarity I hadn't known I needed. I wasn't their backup plan anymore. I was free. A few days after the dinner, I threw myself into work, determined to prove my worth. My apartment in Fresno became a fortress of focus, my laptop screen glowing late into the night. I was leading a new project at the tech firm, a machine learning model to streamline client data for a major retailer. Jeff, my colleague, was my partner on this, and we spent hours brainstorming, debugging code, and tweaking algorithms. His easygoing humor kept me grounded, cutting through the fog of my family's words. One afternoon, as we pored over datasets in the office, he leaned back and said, "Sheila, this model's a game changer. You're killing it." His words hit differently. No pity, no comparison, just respect. By the end of the week, our demo impressed the client, earning us a contract extension and a shout-out from the CEO. For the first time in days, I felt a spark of pride, a reminder that I was good at something that I mattered. My phone, though, was a constant distraction. Mom's texts came first, a mix of guilt and urgency. "Sheila, we need to talk about this. You can't just walk away." Dad's were less direct, more like him trying to smooth things over. "Let's sit down as a family, kid." I read them, my thumb hovering over the reply button, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Their voices from that night. "You're not half the woman she is," still echoed sharp and unyielding. My sister sent one message, short and cold. "You really think you're better than us now?" I stared at it, my chest tightening, then locked my phone and shoved it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to face them, not after everything I'd carried for them. Jade, my best friend, noticed the shift in me. We met for coffee at a small shop downtown, the kind with mismatched chairs and too loud music. I told her about the dinner, the email, the silence I'd chosen. She leaned forward, her eyes fierce, and said, "Sheila, you've been propping them up for years. It's time to put yourself first." She reminded me of the late nights I'd spent coding in college, the awards I'd won, the career I'd built from scratch. "You're not just their backup plan," she said, her voice steady. "You're a force, and they don't get to dim that." Her words were like a lifeline, pulling me out of the hurt I'd been drowning in. I nodded, stirring my coffee, feeling the truth of it settle in my bones. But the pain didn't vanish. At night, when the apartment was quiet, I'd replay the dinner, the way Mom's eyes lit up for my sister, the way Dad's agreement cut deeper than I expected. I'd think about the years I'd spent paying their debts, hoping for a scrap of their approval. It wasn't just the money, it was the weight of being unseen, of being less in their eyes. I'd sit at my desk staring at the project files and wonder why I still cared what they thought. Jeff noticed my quieter moments at work, once asking, "You okay, Sheila? You seem off." I brushed it off with a smile, saying, "Just tired," but the truth was heavier. I was proud of my work, but the hurt lingered, a shadow I couldn't outrun. The project's success gave me something to hold on to. We rolled out the model, and the client's feedback was glowing. Sales projections up, efficiency doubled. Jeff and I were called into a meeting where the team applauded our work. I stood there soaking it in, feeling the pieces of myself coming back together. Jade was right. I'd built this life, this career, without their validation. I started to see my worth not through their eyes, but through my own. The promotion I'd earned before the dinner came with a raise enough to rebuild the savings I'd drained for them. I wasn't invisible at work, wasn't second best. But the ache of their rejection stayed, a quiet bruise that flared when I let my guard down. I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. I was still finding my footing, learning to stand tall without their shadows looming over me. A month after the dinner, my sister called, her voice thick with desperation because her career was crumbling. I was in my Fresno apartment wrapping up a late-night coding session when my phone lit up with her name. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen, but curiosity won out. "Sheila, I need your help," she said, her tone unsteady, like she'd rehearsed it. She explained how her violin gigs had dried up, no bookings, no sponsors, just a string of canceled shows. She needed money fast to cover rent and keep her music dreams alive. "You've got a good job," she pressed. "Can't you spare something for me?" I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, her words stirring the old ache of being second best. I took a breath and said, "No, I've already given enough." Her silence was heavy. Then she snapped, "You've always been so selfish." The line went dead before I could respond. Within hours, my phone buzzed with notifications. My sister had taken to social media, posting a long rant on her public page. "Some people think they're above family," she wrote, tagging me for the world to see. "Sheila's too busy with her fancy job to care about us." She called me cold, ungrateful, a traitor who turned her back on the people who raised her. Her followers, mostly music fans and old high school friends, piled on, leaving comments like, "What kind of sister does that?" and "You deserve better." I scrolled through the posts, my hands shaking each word a fresh cut. She'd twisted the story painting herself as the victim while I was the villain who abandoned her. Mom and Dad jumped in as I knew they would. Mom called the next morning, her voice tight with anger. "How dare you leave your sister hanging?" she said. "She's struggling and you're just sitting there hoarding your money." Dad's text came later, blunt and accusing. "You're breaking this family apart, Sheila. Fix it." Neither mentioned the years I'd paid their debts, the sacrifices I'd made to keep their home. It was all about her, always her. I sat on my couch, their words looping in my head, but I didn't reply. I'd spent too long trying to earn their approval only to be blamed for her failures. Their loyalty to her was a wall I couldn't break through. I showed Jade the posts at our next coffee meetup. She read them, her jaw clenched, and slid my phone back across the table. "They're trying to guilt you into giving in," she said, her voice firm. "Don't let them drag you back." I nodded, but the sting of those comments lingered, public proof of how little they valued me. I checked my sister's page again that night, seeing more likes, more shares, more people calling me heartless. I wanted to fire back, to tell the world how I'd carried them all, but I stopped myself. Responding would only fuel their narrative, keep me trapped in their drama. Instead, I turned off notifications and focused on what I could control. Work was my anchor. Jeff and I were already planning the next phase of our project, and the CEO had hinted at a leadership role for me. I wasn't the failure they painted me as. I wasn't selfish. But the hurt still burned, not just from my sister's words, but from Mom and Dad's quick defense of her. They hadn't even asked my side, hadn't paused to consider what I'd done for them. It was like I didn't exist unless I was useful to her. That week, I made a choice. I blocked my sister's number, muted Mom and Dad's messages, and locked my social media. I was done being their scapegoat, done letting their accusations define me. Each step felt like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. I loved them deep down, but love wasn't enough when it came with strings, when it demanded I shrink myself to lift her up. I looked out my apartment window, the Fresno skyline steady against the dusk, and felt a resolve harden inside me. Cutting them off wasn't just about money, it was about reclaiming my life, my worth, my peace. I wasn't turning back. 3 months later, Jade told me what had happened to my family. We were sitting in her favorite Fresno cafe, the hum of conversation around us, when she leaned in, her voice low but steady. She'd heard through mutual friends that Mom and Dad had sold the family home, the one I'd spent years protecting from foreclosure. They couldn't keep up with the remaining debts without my payments, and the bank had closed in. They'd moved into a cramped rental apartment on the edge of town, a far cry from the cozy house where I'd grown up. Jade said Mom was still trying to salvage her flower shop, working long hours for a fraction of what it used to bring in. Dad, always the quieter one, had taken a part-time job at a hardware store to make ends meet. I listened, stirring my coffee, feeling a pang of guilt, but no urge to step in. Their choices had led them here, not mine. My sister's career, Jade told me, was in free fall. Her violin performances, once the centerpiece of our family's pride, had dwindled to nothing. The social media stunt she'd pulled, calling me selfish, had backfired. Promoters saw her as unprofessional, and her bookings dried up completely. She'd moved back in with Mom and Dad, relying on their limited income while scrambling for any gig she could find. Jade showed me a post from a local music page where my sister had auditioned for a small community orchestra and didn't make the cut. "She's not the star they thought she was," Jade said, not unkindly. I nodded, staring at the post, my heart heavy but resolute. I'd spent too long carrying her dreams alongside theirs. Meanwhile, my own career was soaring. The machine learning project with Jeff had put me on the radar at work, and I'd been promoted to lead data scientist. My days were filled with new challenges, mentoring a small team, pitching ideas to executives, and refining models that were transforming our clients' businesses. Jeff and I celebrated the latest milestone over drinks, and he raised a glass, saying, "To Sheila, who's unstoppable." I laughed, the warmth of his words sinking in a stark contrast to the cold dismissal I'd grown up with. Then a week ago, I got an email that changed everything, a job offer from a top tech firm in Sacramento. It was a senior role with a salary that dwarfed my current one, and a chance to lead cutting-edge AI research. I read the offer letter again and again, imagining a new city, a fresh start far from the shadows of my family's expectations. But leaving Fresno wasn't a simple decision. This was the city where I'd built my life, where Jade and Jeff had become my anchors. I'd walk through downtown past the cafes and parks and feel a pull to stay, to keep proving myself here. Yet the idea of Sacramento kept tugging at me, a place where I could be Sheila, not the daughter who wasn't enough, not the sister who was selfish. I talked it over with Jade one evening, my voice quiet as I admitted I'm scared to start over, but I'm more scared of staying stuck. She reached across the table, her hand steady on mine, and said, "You've already rebuilt yourself once. You can do it again." Her confidence made the decision feel less like a leap and more like a step forward. I hadn't spoken to Mom, Dad, or my sister since I'd blocked their numbers. Jade said they'd asked about me, dropping hints through mutual friends, but I wasn't ready to open that door. Their lives had unraveled, and part of me ached for the family we'd once been laughing together, sharing secrets under flashlights. But that family was gone, replaced by one that saw me as a means to an end. The Sacramento offer felt like a chance to leave that behind, to build a life where my worth wasn't tied to their approval. I hadn't said yes yet, but as I sat in my apartment looking at the skyline, I'd always known I felt the weight of possibility. Staying meant comfort, familiarity. Leaving meant freedom, a chance to be seen for who I was, not who they wanted me to be. 6 months after that fateful dinner, I stood in my new Sacramento apartment looking back on my journey. The city's skyline sparkled through my window, a new rhythm to my life that felt both unfamiliar and exhilarating. I'd taken the job offer, packed my life into boxes, and left Fresno behind. My new role as a senior AI researcher was demanding but thrilling, leading a team, presenting at conferences, shaping projects that pushed the boundaries of tech. I'd made new friends, found a favorite coffee shop with a view of the river, and started running in the mornings, the crisp air clearing my mind. For the first time, I woke up each day feeling light, unburdened by the weight of my family's expectations. I hadn't spoken to Mom, Dad, or my sister since I blocked their numbers, and the silence, once heavy, now felt like freedom. Jade kept me updated, though I rarely asked. She'd heard from a mutual friend that Mom and Dad were still in their small rental, scraping by. Mom's flower shop had shuttered for good, its windows boarded up, a relic of her dreams. Dad's part-time job at the hardware store barely covered their bills, and the strain showed in their faces, or so Jade said. My sister's life was no better. Her violin career had flatlined. She'd taken a job teaching music at a community center, but her posts online were bitter, lashing out at the industry, at promoters, at anyone but herself. Jade showed me one of her recent rants, blaming disloyal family for her struggles. I read it, my heart steady, no longer stung by her words. Their lives had unraveled further, but I felt no guilt, only a quiet acknowledgement that their choices, not mine, had shaped their path. My own path was clearer now. At work, I was respected. My ideas valued. My team threw a small celebration when our latest project hit a major milestone, and I stood there smiling, surrounded by people who saw me for who I was. Jade visited last month, her laughter filling my apartment as we cooked dinner together. She raised a glass and said, "To you, Sheila, for building this life." I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the truth of it settle in. I'd spent years chasing my family's approval, tying my worth to their fleeting praise. But in Sacramento, I'd learned to measure myself by my own standards, my work, my resilience, my choices. The ache of their rejection hadn't vanished entirely, but it no longer defined me. Looking back, I saw how their favoritism had shaped me, pushed me to prove myself, but also how it had trapped me in a cycle of seeking love that came with conditions. Cutting them off wasn't just about leaving Fresno or stopping the payments. It was about choosing myself, about refusing to let their view of me dim my own light. I thought of the dinner, the email, the social media storm, and the silence that followed. Each moment had been a step toward this, standing in my own space, whole, unbroken. I didn't hate them. I just couldn't carry them anymore. To anyone watching this story unfold, I want to say, this family isn't a debt you owe forever. If the people who are supposed to love you make you feel small, if they demand your sacrifice, while offering nothing in return, it's okay to walk away. It's not betrayal, it's survival. Cutting ties with my family was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it gave me back my life. I learned that my worth isn't tied to their approval, that I can build a world where I'm enough. You can too. Let go of what holds you back, even if it's the people you love most. Choose yourself because you deserve to live a life that's truly yours.